Dayo Israel. Tonight, I have someone that I've admired for so many years. When I started my development career or my activism as a young boy, I was in high school. I used to go to their office at Ibat Street in Yaba in my school uniform. And now that organization that I was part of as a child, that when I started my advocacy for human rights and child rights, then moved on to Sojade Kweba in Ikoyi in Ikeja. But the organization was headed at a time, I believe, from the founding stage by my guest tonight. I've heard her name for so many years as a child, as a young person. And growing up to see her and all the exploit that she has done is a great inspiration to not just me, but many people in my generation. I have with me today Miss Ayo Obe, the founding president of CLO. I believe, I'm sure if I was wrong, she'll correct me when she comes live on the show. And she is one of the strongest women Nigeria has ever produced. She has done amazing work in promoting human rights in Nigeria. She's a legal practitioner. She's faced the bullets and many detention and harassment by the military government of Ibrahim Babangida and Sonny Abacha. I am joined by Miss Ayo Obe. Hello, Miss Obe. How are you, ma?
I'm fine, thank you. But honestly, Dayo, I'm not the founding president of the Civil Liberties Organization. That honor belongs to Olisa Agbakoba. And in fact, I wasn't even a member of the Civil Liberties Organization when it was founded. Secondly, it doesn't make sense to call me one of the strong. We like to point out that people who have to military dictatorship or oppression are somehow different from us. I'm not different from the rest of most other people. I like my comfortable life. I like to keep things quiet, but just like everybody else, there are sometimes when you have to stand up and be counted. And unfortunately for me, when I became deputy president of the Civil Organization, we were expecting that we would be returning to civilian by the following, and unfortunately for me, when the time came for me to become to stand for president, we were still under military dictatorship, and nobody else wanted the job. So it's not a matter of being strong; it's just a matter, perhaps, of being a bit too embarrassed to say I don't.
Ma, you have a very strong pedigree. You have a class. You have good education. I don't want to over flatter you, and you have a lot of qualities to serve Nigeria. I'm supposed to go back there later in the program, but let me start from there. Why in 1999, when it was the introduction of democracy or democratic call into Nigeria, why didn't people like you and your class go into government and move from the trenches, from advocates to implementers of the democracy that you were fighting for? You have everything it takes to be a senator. You have everything it takes to be a president. But I believe that people like you should have, after all the fight that you guys did, should have got into government. What happened at that time? Why didn't people like you get into politics? And Olisa and the others.
Some people did get into politics, but for somebody like me, I believe that if you can't speak the language of the people very clearly, you shouldn't be running for office. And I don't speak Yoruba well enough for me to put myself forward as a senator or for political office. However, when I was asked to fill any role, whether it was as the chair of the advisory committee on the exercise of the prerogative of mercy or police service commission, I did what I stepped up to the plate and did anything that I had been appointed to. So and one tries to make one's wherever one lands, one tries. But I think that some of my colleagues in the pro-democracy movement did go into politics. But I think that it's a mistake for us to think that you are big in human rights or activism, therefore you are big in politics, because it doesn't work like that. And I remember, in fact, when we had the first demonstrations against the annulment of the June 12th election in 1993, and late Dr. Becker and some had led huge demonstrations in Lagos against the annulment. And one of my colleagues said, if Becker wanted to become president, he could become president. And I remember, you can't just work like that. And in fact, if we look at the fate of a national hero like Gani Fawemi, he formed his political party, National Conscience Party. He tried to run for office, but it's not just that Nigerians didn't vote for him as president.
True that.
Even at the state level, the votes, and because I remember one of my my friends, Bamidele Aturu, ran for governor on the ticket of NCP, and I voted for the election, but the number of votes was just very small. So I think that we viewed ourselves if we think that simply being an activist is enough for you to, people have other considerations in mind when they are voting for who's going to be governor.
Absolutely, man. Thank you so much, man. Now, let's go back to the story, because one of the reasons why I'm having this conversation is for people in my generation to understand the sacrifices that people like you made. Because, we're born, a lot of us are millennials, and, we're born in the age where you can use your cell phone, you can tweet, you can call the president anything. As a matter of fact, a young Nigerian in about 4 years ago, the last election, called the former president, compared him to a pig or a goat or something like that. You couldn't do this in the Abacha years or the Babangida years. They will come for you. And so we enjoy democracy today, but we need to appreciate the sacrifices and the price that was paid by people like you. Please, man, could you take us through that journey and share with us your experience in the trenches at that time? How did you get involved? How did you even start getting engaged in the advocacy movement? What led you into it?
I want to correct you about something, Dayo, because I think that I personally, I wouldn't see any reason why I would call somebody a pig or a goat. But that is not the same thing as saying that you cannot criticize or poke fun at or even insult somebody who is in government. And in fact, we are seeing now with the young journalist who sang a song against the Minister of the Interior, suddenly being called up to and remanded in prison custody over a public holiday where we're supposed to be celebrating our democratic rights. So I think there's a difference between abuse and so on. It's not something that I do. But I don't think that there's any particular route to these things. I happened to have been, as I mentioned, that the Civil Liberties Organization was founded by Olisa Agbakoba and 3 other people, namely Clement Wanko, Abdul Oro, and Richard Ak. And the 4 of them founded the CLO. And it just happened that at the time when the CLO was making its mark, getting people who had been locked up, released from detention. Some of them had been locked up since Gawan's time, which at that point was almost 50 years ago, just for wandering or some, the thing that they would get them, take them to jail, arrest them for wandering or whatever, then get them before a magistrate's court. The magistrate will give a date, and then the person will be remanded in prison and they'll be forgotten there. So the CLO had founded against that, but I wasn't part of that. But when I read in the papers that the people who had been released after 15 years of detention had now landed on the doorstep of Olisa Agbakoba, said, just like that. Our people have forgotten us. They don't even know that we're alive. Just give us some. And it turned out that I had been at law school with Olisa, but of course at that time I was a JJC. I didn't know that I had law school with him. But when we had a dinner to mark our 10th at the 10th anniversary of our call to the bar, I came to that my classmate. So when I saw him around the courts, I said, it seems that no good deed goes unpunished. Is there anything I can do to? And that's how I got involved with the CLO. And really, I don't think there's anything particular. You attend the meetings, and of course, when I think mostly it's a matter of, if you have a view, training yourself not to keep quiet, not to say that, well, I mean, when I was in law school, I didn't dare talk, because then I had a really strong Oyinbo accent, and it was, people. But by the time I started CLO, yes, as they say, out of the fullness of the heart, the mouth speaketh. And so I think that was what made Abduloro and Chidi Odinkalu feel that now that we have got a new constitution where we say we should have a deputy president, that Ayo is possibly a good talker, that will persuade her to run for the deputy president. Anyway, they came attending a meeting in October 1992. They said, yeah, why don't you stand for deputy president? And so I thought, why not? There are times say, if you're asked to do something, as long as it's not illegal or immoral, then take it, do it. Don't always be cautious and say but, and so on. So I said, okay, let me stand. And somebody else also stood for the office, and I was elected. But as I said at the time, I was thinking that maybe we'll have a civilian government by next year. Be a piece of cake if I have. Immediately after I was elected, I remember Abduloro saying, there's no turning back now. And I was thinking, what does he mean, no turning back? That what? Not knowing that by the time it came for me to become president, he would be in detention along with Chima Uba and I've forgotten former General Obasanjo's lawyer Tunji Abayomi, and they were all in detention because when the fake coup or the phantom coup had come up, they'd given a press conference. There was no coup. And anyway, for Chima, they just to arrest him for his role in the campaign for democracy, because actually the Civil Liberties Organization was one of the organizations that had joined, one of the civil society groups that had joined the campaign for democracy, which was headed by Dr. Beko Ransom Kuti. And we had seconded Ubadi to lead, to be the sort of organizing person there. So at the time the campaign for democracy met and decided that we're not going to take this because Babangida had been a transition to civil rule program for about 2 or 3 years, and he kept on changing the goalposts. These people are banned from participating. These people are not banned. They are banned. They're banned. And then when it came to because that is actually at that point, Chief MK Abiola had not joined the had not joined the presidential race, but he now when they now banned again, and somebody like Major General Shehu Yaradua, when he was planning to run for president, Babangida came out the goalposts again and stopped him from running. So it just became a matter of now MKO came in again. He won the election. He was in the middle of being declared when Babangida said, no, sorry. People said, come on, this is too much. So we decided we were going to come out. And, when you have people like Chima Ubani, they have not just the ideology, but they also have the organizing capacity. So the Abacha regime knew that his role in the success of campaign in leading the kind of demonstrations that whether Babangida likes it or not, it was those demonstrations that made him have to step aside. he would like to pretend that he decided to hand over to. But the fact is that the General Sani Abacha had killed 190 people on the street during those demonstrations, and you could tell Babangida's colleagues were realizing, these people are no longer afraid of our guns. But for the time, he taunted the Nigerian people. He said that people have a infinite capacity for compromise, and he was kind of trolling us. And he also had, this sort of the master practitioners in the art of violence. And suddenly he discovered that the Nigerian people were no longer afraid of his violence. And so he came out, and the same thing happened to Abacha. He too thought that he would make himself a civilian president. And the Nigerian people, they showed that we are not afraid of your guns and violence. And his fellow officers, just as they had done with Babangida, I always say the captain is taking the ship onto the rocks. There's going to be a man overboard, and that man overboard is the person who thinks he's going to become president.
Sorry, Madeline, I didn't hear that. You said it's going to be a man what? I didn't hear your last statement.
I said that when the captain insists on steering the ship onto the rocks, there's going to be a man overboard. In the ship with the captain, they too have their load in the ship. It's not just the people who are in the bottom of the ship who are going to suffer if it hits the rocks. The officers too are going to, they will quickly throw the captain overboard. Abacha had a heart, however. No comment.
I was going to ask you, were you ever detained at all? Were you ever detained, ever arrested?
A whole week. Time when, June 12th, during June 1993, I lived at Yaba at that time, and as I was going home, I saw Abdul Oro. You passed Panti Street, and there was a balcony there. I saw Abdul Oro at the balcony of Panti Street, and so he was saying, "Come up," and so because apparently they were being detained, and they felt lawyer perspective. So I went up, and then those people said, you cannot go, madam. And I said, what do you mean I can't go? They said, no, you're part of them. So they weren't going to let me. That is the closest that I had come to being detained. Of course, they did not detain me in the end, and I went home. And later that evening, my mother turned up with a suitcase, night dress, toothbrush, and all these things. Said that she was planning to bring it to me at the police station. I said, "Mommy, that's not how we roll at police station." They were putting on of nightgowns, and then by the time I was president and Abacha was arresting people, it happened. Police had been arrested after we had our man march. Well, he had been arrested and released, and then he was.
I was actually at the man march. I was at the man march. I was a little boy there.
At that time, he was, when he was now arrested the second time, he was coming back into the country. They now brought him in handcuffs to the Civil Liberties Organization office at Soji Adepegba. It was actually in Ikeja.
Yes. 13, yes, 13, off Allen.
Off Allen Avenue in Ikeja.
Yeah, Molade Adubi was there at that time and all of that.
He was able to slip word to the people that they have a list of people they want to arrest, and that my name. So that's how I knew that I was supposed to be arrested, and I sort of, they want to arrest me. There's nothing I can do. But my law partner, who I practice law with, he was saying, no, it's different if they catch you. but you don't sit down and wait for them to arrest you. And meanwhile, my executive director, Abdul Oro, had already gone underground, long since. And so he was saying, President, you have to go underground. You have to go underground. You have to. And so on Monday morning, I said, well, okay, let me just go. I have this case at the High Court. Let me just go. Because, we have to earn our living. I went to the Federal High Court. So my executive director from said, President, are you? I said, no, I'm just going. He said, President, so I had to go. So I got arrested.
Wow, you were so lucky, man. With all the news that Ojudu was talking about how we had to stay in a cell for all of this, what was special about you that it ever came for you?
No, they suffered. I mean, the time, I think that also because, I would be going to church at Archbishop Vining Memorial Church, as it was then. And people would say, Mr. Obe, haven't they arrested you yet? And I would say, no. And
wow.
That Abacha was just arresting people for talking, contrary to people might think. But when you got close to where their money was, then you could be a target. And when it looked as if you were threatening their position, holding Nigeria by the throat, then you could be arrested. And until the United Action for Democracy had, coalesced the position, because there were conflicting positions on the June 12th issue. Until United Action for Democracy had finally coalesced its position and then started to organize these demonstrations. There was a 5 million man march, but there were also other demonstrations, and those demonstrations showed that the guns of the military were no longer going to be enough to keep Abacha in power, and also his attempt to succeed himself was a woeful failure. That's when Abacha now started looking for who are my problem, who are standing in the way of me becoming president. Of course, he arrested Olisa as the convener of United Action for Democracy, but he knew that Civil Liberties Organization was giving support in every way it could, and was also a member of the groups that made up UAD. So he was also looking to arrest us. So it was when he didn't just indiscriminately arrest, although some people tried to exercise that power on his behalf. But in real terms, I think that perhaps also because they felt that I was a little bit visible as the they had felt, well, he's just talking, he's only talking. Well, let me continue talking.
Wow, that's amazing, man. What were some of the were you involved at the election, leading to the annulment and all of that? Did you play any role in that? Did you have any interaction with MKO? What were your experiences at those times?
We did not know Chief Abiola at that time. We were not dealing with him because he was a politician. And we were civil society. We certainly were fighting for the right of Nigerians.
Democracy, yes.
To choose their own leaders. We were fighting for democracy, but we weren't directly involved in politics. And to challenge Ibrahim Babangida when he kept on moving the goalposts, as I said. But quite frankly, I was one of the few people in civil society who voted on the election day on June 12th, because many people, first of all, they were not at all happy with Babangida forcing people to be in either the National Republican Convention or
the Social Democratic Party.
They felt that in itself was already a wuru-wuru type of democracy. And then on top of it, Babangida kept on, as I said, he kept on moving the
goalpost.
And so people were saying that this is not a real election, and that's why even though many people say it was the freest and fairest election that we had in Nigeria, I always add the rider on the day, because what had happened before June 12th, 1993, in terms of the way that the military dictatorship was continually changing the goalposts and banning and unbanning. That was not fair. So, but I went out to vote. But as I was saying on my Twitter feed, people were really, they were not happy with the election. And in fact, Chief Karimi actually took out half a page advertisement in National Concord to say that he's not voting in this election, that it's a sham. And, you know, many people would say that in a way he was proved right, because Babangida always meant it to be a sham. You know, he never to carry it through. And so after the election, that was when we in civil society now started coming together with the rest of, with the political class, because we had the campaign for democracy, by which we were insisting on the return to the rule. And that was when Berko, as I said, he led the struggle. But there was always a dispute between those members of civil society. We want a sovereign national conference, such as they had in the Benin Republic, and were trying to have the Democratic Republic of Congo. And those who said, on June 12th, we stand. And it took quite some years before we could get the two opposing camps, if I can call them that, to reach an agreement on the way we would move forward. Because in the end, we said that we would support the realization of Chief Abiola's mandate, but he, in return, must agree that when he realizes his mandate, he will convene.
There must be a sovereign national conference. Absolutely. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Ma. But if you look at what has happened between then, or before I go there, then NKO went on to declare himself as president. What was the position of the civil society on that decision? Were you guys consulted? Was it a mutual decision?
I was deputy president then. But if you remember, we were effectively under a kind of lockdown. The strike by the
I think Mrs. Obe's internet is having some issues. Been noticing that earlier, but I'm sure she's going to join us back and in the conversation. Another interesting conversation that we're having. Tomorrow we're going to have a collapsed event. Yeah, Mr. Obe is back.
It just went off.
Thank you, Master. Yes, I think there's a signal network from your side, but I think it's better now.
Well, I don't know.
Yes, okay, I can hear you now, man.
Yes. What was I saying?
We were talking about how, you guys were the civil society and Ekpeteno Declaration.
Okay, it was almost as if we had been confined to our houses because of the strike by Nipeng, and we were doing a ville morte. I don't know. I know that I had actually also gone to MK Abiola's house after the June 12th cancellation, when before Sani Abacha took over power, and we had tried to work with him to help him realize his mandate. But I think in the end, he preferred to go. It wasn't so much that he preferred to go by way of the establishment of the interim transitional national government was support. He didn't support that society would have needed to mobilize across the country. And then he left the country. So by the time he came back, I don't know whether people were in touch with him. I know that he was probably in touch with his political party. And I think that by then, the campaign for democracy was joining. There was yet another coalition. It was the National Democratic Coalition, which was NADECO. So I don't know the stage at which, what the level of discussion was, just the deputy president of the PLO. But when he came back into the country, he declared himself, he wasn't so much that he declared himself the president. He said, this was the election. This was the result. I won. you know. So I must be president. I must be sworn in. So I think that it wasn't just that he woke up on the basis of nothing and said president. Well, he was coming and saying that, look, I had won an election and this the result be honored. So we were ready to support him, and we will continue to be ready to support him. And we were insisting on his release because we wanted him to come out, realize his mandate, take up his mandate, and then convene the Sovereign National Conference.
Ma, there's a lacuna that had not been filled since we started this conversation. So a lot of people have talked about Abacha, what Abacha did, what Babangida did, but nobody talks about what happened during the Shonekon years. What happened during the ING and the Shonekon years? And why did Abacha have to step in? I just realized that nobody had actually told us what happened with Shonekon.
I have no idea, because when Babangida said he was stepping aside and he put up Shonekon, it was like an insult to the Nigerian people. You remember that Abiola, a Yoruba Muslim, had run for office with a Kanuri Muslim as his running mate, and Nigerians overwhelmingly for that ticket. Now, and that Nigerians telling that we are not interested in identity. That's not the motive. We want the candidate that we want. Okay? Now, Babangida said, no, you as long as we give you a Yoruba man who is from Egba land, and you can have what you want. In other words, it doesn't matter who the person is. We're just going to give you somebody who ticks he's a Muslim. He may not be a Muslim, but he's an Egba. So he's a Yoruba man. To be enough for you. And Nigerians said, no. What does that even mean? It's actually the same way that they brought President Obasanjo out and said, he's another Egba man for you now. What's the problem? You know, it's a sort of attempt to reduce us to identity politics and to force politics. It's a shame, and it's time that we as a nation were able to run. So when the military were, I think that Abiola was expecting Abacha to remove Shonekon and complete the June 12th election process. But Abacha said, I've done it twice, so I can't do it the third time. Because you remember on the 31st of December, well, you won't.
Yes.
But on the 1st of December 1984, he had announced the coup which removed President Shehu Shagari.
Shagari, and put Buhari there.
And put Buhari there.
Another interesting conversation. Mrs. Obe is going to be back tomorrow, 12 o'clock. We're going to be having Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu and all the others on the Zoom webinar. Sorry, I think it's the network from your side. Is it possible to adjust a little bit?
No, I'm using.
Okay.
I'm not sure why it keeps on going off, because it doesn't. I mean, it just says. I'm not even sure what happens.
Okay, I think it's better now. You were talking about Shonekon and the Egba, because what you said actually brings into light this old northern person has served 8 years, Yoruba Obasanjo served 16, Jonathan served another 5, so power must remain in the north, and all of this conversation. It brings to perspective where those conversations has been originating from over the years.
No, I don't think that we have to throw the whole concept of balancing and rotation out of the window. All I'm saying is that it's not the only factor, but it should not be used to say, because we have been governed and ruled by people from the north for the vast majority of this country's history. So we shouldn't we shouldn't just buy to the idea that So I think there's a difference. But the point was that during the time that Shonekon was in power, and Abacha, and people were saying to Abacha, look, finish the June 12th process. And I think that's what MK Abiola expected. But it turned out that Abacha had said that he likes being in power. They said he had announced the coup which removed Shagari and installed Buhari. He now announced the coup, which removed Buhari and installed Babangida. He said that I can't always be the blushing bridesmaid and never the I can't always be the bridesmaid and never the blushing bride. So he took power for himself. But they kept on coming out with the story of the military don't want Abiola, they don't want him. And I remember having a conversation, which I said, but that's ridiculous. In the first place, the results from the barracks show that the soldiers in their barracks voted overwhelmingly for MKO Abiola. But even if they hadn't, that's what a democratic election is. You don't always get what you want. So I think that that was the problem about Nekon and Abacha. Abacha felt just have it for himself.
Let's talk about the civil society. You guys played a lot of role in the journey to democratic government in Nigeria. But is this the CSO that you worked for many of those years? How strong and relevant is the CSO in Nigeria is begs the question. How do we strengthen the role of civil society? As a matter of fact, right now, people say that civil society is almost, you can't differentiate between the political class and the civil society. There's so much handshaking that has gone beyond comfort. How do we strengthen the CSO moving forward from June 12th?
I think, first of all, that we should recognize that civil society, when the only enemy is a military dictatorship, is inevitably going to be different from civil society where people are involved in partisan politics. Because some people will have their political preferences and others will have different preferences. And I think that we should understand that the fact that people have political preferences does not detract from capacity to do their job as where they have jobs in civil society. And I give the example of, I'm going to take budget as an example, not because one of the founders was offered a job which he eventually declined, but because the work that budget does, it doesn't mean going to the street. And, it's not glamorous in that regard. People think civil society is strong when they are out demonstrating and doing revolution and overthrowing governments. We've done that. The real job of civil society, as we are standing now, is that we have to strengthen our democracy. We have to work on our democracy. It's not a day's job. So that when budget now looks at, does this boring thing, this money that was supposed to be spent, has it been spent? Who is spending it? How was it spent? And all these things, they are small steps. But you can't be having revolution every day and nobody ever follows the money. Okay? So I think that civil society, in following the money, is actually doing more to strengthen Nigerian governance and to strengthen Nigerian democracy than simply getting rid of an unpopular government, because many governments will be unpopular. As soon as they won an election and a government becomes unpopular, it involves more than that. And so I think that work, I salute it. And it could be civil society involved in saying, the way that this election was run was not good enough. These are the things that we think should be done to make it better. Or it could be civil society, as I say, following the money. It could be civil society saying, elected representatives, you you went to the National Assembly and you did A, B, C, D, and holding them to account, so that a civil society group like Enough is Enough come out and say, we're going to show you who your elected representatives are. State House of Assembly, that so that you know who to get in contact with when you want to make a point. Because some of these are elected representatives. They act as though once they're elected, they don't have to answer us at all.
Thank you so much. My final question, Ma, before we let you go. Now we are in a democracy, and as some people like to call it, civil rule. How do young people begin to play their part in building the Nigeria of our dreams? What is your advice to
Well, I
young
think
people, Ma?
my first advice is register to vote and actually vote. Young people actually have the majority of votes in this country. They far outnumber the elderly like me. They have the numbers. Even if we're only talking about those who are aged 18 to 24, they are more than those of us who are over 65. They have the numbers. But the question is, what is it that they are focusing on? What do they want? So first of all, you have to, if the only participation you do is that you register to vote and you vote, you've done something. Because I don't go for those people who say, oh, the vote will not be counted and all the rest of it. I'll say, of course it won't be counted if you go out and vote. If you don't cast it, how can it be counted? It's when you vote and then not count, then you can move to the next stage. But often you find that when you vote and it's not counted, it will have to be counted whether they like it or not. Have to be involved. Yes, you have to earn your living, but part of you need to also make the connection between the things that stop you from earning your living, lack of infrastructure and so on, and the people that you vote for. Of course, now in these COVID-19 times, government is going to have to start being less careless in the way it spends money. But when I see the National Assembly making a lot of we were going to pass this law or summoning the Chinese, I always say, yeah, because you don't want us to look at the money that you have just collected for renovating the National Assembly. You don't want us to look at those your luxury cars. Please, you need to also challenge your elected representatives. Don't just resort to nothing can be done. This is Nigeria. Nobody made a change by adopting that attitude, but also try to build up your own constituency of people that are ready to discuss. And to say that, I always think that the most disempowering thing is, well, it won't make any difference. It will make a difference if enough, because if late Gani used to say, "Are you ready to die?" And of course, I would say, because nobody's ready to die. If 10,000 pushing with one finger can move more than one person pushing with all their strength. So Dayo, I'm my battery is low. I remember when me that you took part in the 5 million man march.
March, yes.
My late father, who when he was a schoolboy at Government College, Ibadan, when late Michael Imodu, the trade union leader, the British had to release him. And when he was released, crowds came out to meet him, and my dad snuck away from school and was there. So he said when he got back to school, his headmaster, who was an Oyinbo man at that time, he said, were you there? And he said, he showed him a picture. There was a boy in the government college Ibadan uniform. And he said, is that you? And of course, you couldn't really tell. We said, I knew it must be you. And so these things, young people can be politically engaged and involved. It's not just about you have to be old enough to vote. You can see Greta Thunberg. She's not old enough to vote, but she's making her mark. I'm interested in politics, but don't see it only in terms of partisan politics. See it in terms of how do you want to make a difference? How do you want to make a change? Who can? Because when people run for office, and then none of them is running for office on the ticket of to vote to reduce the money that the National Assembly gets. But you have somebody, for example, like Banky W, who says that's which I'm standing for office. And then all you can do is tell him he didn't give us money to vote. I mean, come on, what is that?
Yes,
We
yes.
have to
That's what our
understand that
democracy has become.
it's our own future. We have to examine the
Mm.
platforms on which parties are running, and we don't have to do it across the board. Though. You can vote for this person that you think is good here, and another person at another level. Do you understand? Sometimes the
Absolutely, ma.
choice is always, the choice may not be a very happy choice. Sometimes, as I say, people often vote more against what they don't want than what they want. And many people would have voted in the election to say, these people cannot come back so soon. This is too soon. So, and because if they come back, they will never go again. So it could be any reasons, any number of reasons that people would vote for. But you have to, it don't just my ethnicity, my religion, and direct pocket. The direct pocket is one thing, but the overall good of your community is also important.
Ladies and gentlemen, please help me say a big thank you to Miss Ayo Obe. Thank you so much, Ma, for such insightful conversation, for sharing your thought with us and the knowledge about what you experienced during the years of the struggle. We're very grateful for your time on the CovInspiration tonight, and we wish you the best of luck. For everyone who's been watching, we're so grateful to Miss Ayo Obe for our time and for our insight. Thank you so much, and have a great evening, everyone. God bless you.